Welcome to the Gen Z podcast, episode 3, the importance of routines, daily goals, and how to develop guaranteed consistency. Guaranteed. I'm your host, Ren.
I'm your co-host, Mateo.
Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
So, obviously our topic today is routines. I know this was mainly your idea to focus on, something you care about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, after discussing New Year's resolutions in our previous episode, I think the next step in a New Year's resolution would be developing a solid routine. And that can be a daily routine, that can be a morning routine, that could be a night routine. Any form of structure in your life that is allowing you to get closer to your goals and what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. I think that not necessarily routine. I know routine is important to you, but daily goals, I think for me especially, have necessarily, like, if you don't have structure, I know a lot of people struggle with structure. Even if you don't have structure, you find the beauty in chaos and you set daily goals that you reach or don't reach, and then you adjust and evaluate yourself, which, coming through a lens of stoicism, you're always self-evaluating. You're always self-approving of your activities, and if you don't, then there's something that you know you shouldn't be doing or you need to work on.
And that's why a routine is good, is because with habits, and it's scheduled time in your day, very structured time where you can practice and build the good habits, break the bad ones, change your brain. The neuroplasticity aspect is huge. You're changing the way you think. You're changing the way your brain wakes up and is like, I need to get on my phone. No, wake up. I need to drink some water. I need to go outside.
Mm-hmm. No, we've talked about, I think for me, my most important routine is definitely around sleep. I will continually harp that sleep is the foundation of a good day. Sleep is really the foundation. You spend a lot of your life sleeping, so you might as well make it as high quality as possible.
Right.
Because taking stoicism to the extreme, right? If in every waking moment you're supposed to, improve yourself and experience self-growth, why limit it to those waking moments? Like, why not be able to improve your sleep habits so you're technically improving yourself as you sleep?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And with improved sleep, you get improved energy, improved drive, improved cognitive function. Everything improves with sleep. I mean, I would rather get 6 hours of high-quality, deep REM sleep than 10 hours of just waking up every now and then.
And people don't even, especially in our generation, realize what REM sleep is, or the difference between that, or NREM sleep, and like the different stages of sleep. And that's all very important, right? You think about just like, okay, how do I fall asleep quicker? That's what the main concern is. But there's so many layers of sleep. There's so much that goes into improving your sleep performance, making sure that it's restful. That I think gets under-realized, especially in our generation, which we are kind of speaking to, and we acknowledge that's our audience. And so with it being my New Year's resolution, I also want to just talk about the importance of that, because it definitely does fall under routine.
I definitely agree. I mean, the beginning of a routine is a good night's rest, and then you start the routine. And honestly, if you build a routine that sets you up for good sleep, which is a night routine, which is, in my opinion, one of the least talked about yet most important routines that one person can have, that's setting yourself up for success. You are guaranteeing high quality sleep while you're awake. Mm-hmm. The actions you take before you go to bed. For example, we talked about blue light and reducing your blue light. Caffeine, right? Just stimulation before bed in general. But the importance of daily goals and how they set you up for success is each goal is a very small fragment of what you want to be doing. And success is built in small steps rather than giant leaps. Mm-hmm. It's important to climb every rung of the ladder rather than to try and jump up 2 or 3 at a time.
Exactly.
Because if you fall, you're going to fall all the way back down.
Right. And I think that, you talk about stoicism, and it really is a daily mindset. Mm-hmm. You wake up and you go throughout the day. I know you sent me a passage from Meditations.
I did.
Mm-hmm. That talks about you telling yourself in the beginning of the morning about, like, people will come and bring you trials. And I think, that's part of my routine. I don't think that's necessarily part of everybody's routine, but it just speaks to the fact that, like, you need to, when you wake up, you need to acknowledge the events of your day. You need to game plan for them. and you also need to be prepared for the unprepared. I think
Right.
an unspoken part of routine is also to realize that not everything is going to happen in your routine.
Right.
There will be disturbances, but you need to be able to adapt to that, realize that, and
100%.
embrace it.
And that's the thing, is you cannot predict how life is going to go.
No.
There will be days where you might do nothing in your routine because something comes up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
The human body and mind is built to adapt. We adapt to our environment, we adapt to our own mind, our body adapts. Everything about us is always constantly evolving, bringing me back to the point of stoicism.
Right.
But I think a big thing about daily goals is highlighting the fact that they're objective versus subjective.
Right.
So,
Well, and I think maybe that's not the case, but that's how it should be, right?
and this is our opinion. We believe it should be a
Nice
very
catch.
objective thing.
Nice catch. Opinion-based show, but I think that, like, when you talk about daily goals, they definitely need to be clear and precise. They
Yes.
need to have that objective lens.
Yes.
Because part of, and this is just basic psychology, part of you being more successful at hitting those goals is you're as clear and precise as possible.
Right.
If you're vague, you leave yourself room to be under the impression that you're succeeding, when in reality you're not
Right.
really meeting that goal.
Or you just don't even know what you're actually trying to achieve and how you're going to get there if you're vague.
And it's obviously talked about in Stoicism. It's talked about by many Stoics. The no hesitation, the be clear, no complaints,
Right.
blah 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 blah. And part of that is the clear and precise, because if you know what you're doing, if you set out and you accomplish it, then at the end of the day, you can approve of what you have done. And a large part of that, one of the big four tenets of Stoicism, one of the four values, is honor.
Right.
And part of being honorable is approving of what you did. And so by being clear and precise throughout the day with both your routine and daily goal, you're just one step closer
Right.
to achieving that self-success.
Right. And when everybody defines success differently, but I believe that consistency for everybody in your goals and your routines is the same for everybody. Now, we go about that differently. For example, if my goal were to lift a certain amount of weight by X day, I would be consistent about that differently than you may be consistent about making X amount of money
Right.
at the end of the month.
Well, to me, I think that objectivity in your goal leads to subjectivity in your success, right? Everybody's success is different, and
Right.
it's one of the things that we talk about. Like, we will keep hammering that everything is about you and how you view yourself. It's not about how others view you.
Right.
And so when you set those objective daily goals, they matter to you. They are clear to you. And so that allows you that when you hit those goals or when you don't,
Right.
you can be subjective about why this happened,
Right.
how I got this done, if you got it done, what I can improve on the next day.
And because goals are important to you, your goal should be very precise and unique to yourself. And because of that, it's very important that you don't just go around telling everybody what your goals are.
Right.
When you say what you're going to do, you're releasing dopamine into your mind that you've already done it.
It's
It's
self-actualization, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's good to have confidence, but it's very important to ensure in yourself that you understand that you haven't achieved them yet, and to not go around telling
Well, and
everybody.
I think there's a difference between confidence and ego, and I think that
100%,
we might be sitting up here seeming like we're perfectionists, or we're trying to harp on a message, but one of the teachings of Seneca, my favorite Stoic, is that to know your flaws and not let your ego rule you. Ego, in essence, is sort of an emotion, and so it falls under that category of you control it. You don't let it control you, right?
You have to recognize when your ego is taking over, and ego is a very necessary thing because it allows you to make decisions. It allows you to have your beliefs and views. It allows you to just be who you are. It makes you who you are. But when your ego starts and your emotions start to take over your sense of logic, that is where you start to stray away from stoicism and those beliefs.
Well, and it's like you said, right from the onset, right? It's not about you don't have emotions. It's about realizing when it's appropriate to display those emotions.
Right.
Great leaders have huge egos. They just know how to temper themselves so that that ego doesn't show unless it's necessary to make a decision and instill confidence in whoever you're leading.
Right.
by you yourself having confidence.
And then having confidence, I believe, comes with accountability. And if you are confident in yourself, then you are going to be someone who takes accountability for everything that you do.
Right.
Every single mistake that you make, you're going to say, yes, I made that mistake. Here's where I went wrong. And you're going to fix it. Instead of saying, oh, well, I was so tired, so I slept in and I couldn't go to the gym. No, it's I was tired. I should have been in the gym, and because I wasn't in the gym, I'm probably not going to be as strong today as I could have been.
Right.
And then you fix it.
Well, and that's the beauty about routine, right? Is that if you develop habits, they stick. So you may have that one-off day, but then you realize that it's still a habit you have, and so it may be one-off day, but you're much more likely if you have a routine to continue that trend even after you miss a day than if you just say, I'm going to go to the gym today, like every once in a while. The next day you miss the gym, you're going to be like, oh, it's just an off day, it's a rest day.
Exactly. And this is where I want to shout out to a fellow YouTuber. His is Maxwell, Maxwell, and he is young. I believe he's only 15. And he talks about this example with focusing on consistency more than perfection. We've talked about this previously, but he gives an example. Let's say you were addicted to smoking weed, and your goal was to stop smoking, and so you had a 1,000-day streak of not smoking. But on the 1,001st day, you relapse. Ultimately, in yourself, that's going to be that 1,000 days was all for nothing because you relapsed. But if you look at it from the other perspective, that that's crazy. I went 1,000 days without smoking weed, and I just smoked one day. Look at the if you were to make a graph of those days, your consistency is amazing, and you just have one little downward slope, and then you're right back up to where you were. Instead of, oh, I failed, now I have to restart all that was for nothing, and focusing on perfection.
Well, and I think part of it is, you have that mindset within yourself, but then people nowadays are so quick to beat you down for your mistakes. And I think that we talk about, taking time to withdraw and be introspective and think about your own mistakes and realize them in your own mindset versus, the opinion of the common people. It's very valuable because you have people who are so ready to judge you. So if you do something bad, or if, you say you were set out to accomplish this goal and you don't accomplish it, they're gonna beat you down for that, and they're gonna be incredibly negative towards you. Versus there's all types of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement that you can implement on yourself with your own mindset when you're by yourself. But if you're influenced by others, they're gonna be very negative. There's a large part of society nowadays that doesn't want to see a lot of people succeed because they are not succeeding in those arenas. And so you talk about the Maxwell example, and I think it's a beautiful example, but it's also indicative of that, especially as you talk to actual the mainstream addictions marijuana or other drugs. People are very quick to judge you for that, and they're also quick to judge you for your goals. And so it's important to realize that not only are you setting these daily goals to hold yourself accountable, but also as a fallback so that you can analyze within yourself instead of having other people worry about that for you and taking their opinions too seriously.
Exactly. And with others' opinions, I truly believe that the only people that are going to talk down on you are people who are doing less than you. And the people who envy you, who have less of a sense of purpose in themselves, they are going to be the ones to talk down to you. And that's a big thing that Marcus Aurelius talks about. He says, if you're living your life through someone else's soul, you're never going to satisfy your own. Right. Yes, people are going to bash you, and that's okay. I'm not condoning bashing people or talking down negatively, but if you are someone who is afraid of being judged by other people or talked down upon, let's say you're just starting a fitness channel and you're afraid of what people are going to say, I guarantee those people clowning on you aren't starting a fitness channel of their own. Right. And you have to do what makes you happy, and you have to take your own path.
Well, and you have to acknowledge your own courage, right? Because, in my opinion, it takes courage just to simply acknowledge that you have flaws and that you want to improve yourself. That takes courage. Right. And, you gotta acknowledge that and hold that more valuable than the opinions of others. I know Seneca says in Letters of a Stoic, he says, clothe yourself with a hero's courage and withdraw for a little space from the opinion of the common man. And those two things go hand in hand, right? Exactly. If your actions are courageous, if they are brave, if they bring honor, if they meet the values of Stoicism and ultimately achieve the supreme good and virtue, then who cares what other people think? Because
Exactly.
you know what you're doing is right, and ultimately the opinion of other people matters less because you yourself know you better than any other person does. And
Exactly.
so you have the best judgment of whether that action is good for you or whether it is bad.
Right.
And so if you judge it as good, that matters a lot more than any other person's opinion.
Agreed. And that's not saying to not listen to others' opinions, because some people's opinions may be valuable if they are truly have your best.
It's
If they
it's the mentors though. It's the
Agreed.
mentors.
And it's the people that you consider to be your close friends
Mm-hmm.
who truly want to see you succeed. Your mentors, people who may have more knowledge than you in a certain field, they will give you their opinion, and you should take that and use it as criticism.
It's all a delicate balance, and I would say that neither of us really have it mastered. I certainly will
100%,
admit
yeah.
that I am egotistical at times with my intelligence, and that shows, and that reflects on me poorly. But it's all a journey, and I think that as you go to one extreme, whether you are like, okay, I know this is good for me, and I'm not going to listen to anybody else,
Right.
or you go to the other extreme where you listen to everybody who you think is respectable, you eventually
Right.
will find that balance. And it's just starting at a certain point and realizing that you are at that point and that you have even a journey to go within your mindset towards stoicism and towards philosophy.
Right.
But just starting at that point is what is really important. Because
And
eventually you will find that balance.
And recognizing that where you're at is taking accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's being honest with yourself, and I believe that is something that a lot of people don't do. They lie to themselves about where they're at. And if you lie to yourself, how can you be honest with other people as well? With being accountable for where you're at, it's very important. I personally know that I have so much progress to make in
Right.
this
Everyone
in
does.
this self-improvement
Everyone
journey.
does.
Right. But knowing that is the first most important step. If you think that you know everything, even the wisest of the philosophers had so much more to learn, because knowledge is infinite. That's the beauty of knowledge, is you can never know everything.
Everyone has a specialty.
The pursuit of knowledge is what makes life so beautiful, is because there's so much more to unravel. And I think humility is something that a lot of more people need to have, in just and including myself at times. I'll admit, knowing my place,
Right.
but being confident at the same time in my potential.
It is knowing your place, but like it also is. I think the beauty of society nowadays is you have access to a wealth of knowledge free on the internet. You have access to public libraries, which is another wealth of knowledge,
Right.
and you have the potential, even if you may regard yourself as someone who you're like, oh, I'm not as smart as the next guy, or comparing
Right.
yourself to others. You still have immense potential because you have access to so many resources. And so I think it's
Right.
realizing this is where I'm at now, but this is where I can be.
Right.
All right.
You ready for the fun section?
That's got to be the fun section. I think we've hammered the same points home long enough.
Yeah.
So we've got a different
This
one.
this is an interesting one, but again, first, if you are new, welcome to the channel. We are doing a guest speaker spot giveaway. How can you enter into this giveaway? That's a fantastic question. Well, what you can do is you can subscribe to our YouTube, our Instagram, and our TikTok. Go comment on the latest YouTube video. Go and comment on our Instagram post and interact with our TikTok page, and you will be entered in a random selection of a guest speaker spot on our podcast.
First guest speaker, first guest on the podcast.
We don't know who it's
You
gonna
know
be
this
yet.
podcast is going to blow up. You want to be the first guest on this podcast.
We're going places, and that's not ego, that's confidence, because I believe the work we've put into this podcast is going to lead us somewhere.
All right, let's get into the interesting part. So, recently, Lake Superior State University released the banished words of 2023. Top 10 words.
Top
we
10
shouldn't
words
use
that we
anymore.
should not be using in 2023.
So, let's go over them and let's give them our own banished words.
Number 1, goat.
I feel like it is overused, but I feel like I would rather see goated on here than goat, because goated isn't even
Yeah.
a word. Goat is not
It's
even
just
a word.
an acronym.
No, goated. No, so goat is an acronym. So I regard that as a word. And
Right.
It has meaning.
Okay.
What is goated?
Goated, okay.
Goated. That's goated.
I
What does that even mean?
I think it's
that's greatest of all time.
That's
That's so dumb.
I'm guilty of using that word, both of the words, okay? But
No, I use goat
Yes,
too.
yes.
I don't think goat should be on here. But
you think it
goated?
should be goated.
Yes.
That's goat. You're right. That's horrible. That's atrocious.
That's a terrible use of grammar, and we do not stand for misuse
We
of
do
grammar on
not
this
condone
podcast.
or tolerate the use of the word goated.
Get your vocab up.
Inflection point. Really? That surprises me.
That's very academic.
Yeah, that's something I would see in calculus.
That's something I would use for my like extemp speeches. Be like,
I'm
America's at
surprised.
an
You know,
inflection point.
I don't have a problem with inflection point. Quiet quitting, that's a workplace term.
Yeah, that doesn't really apply here. I mean, we're quiet quitting and doing a podcast, but
Fair enough.
quiet quitting. I think it's just bashing like millennials who are quitting. I think it's kind of ageist.
I think I'm gonna be honest. I don't even really know what it means
It's
because I've
like-
never used it.
I don't really know either, but I think it's like people just like give up on their job. I think I could be very wrong,
Don't
but
quote me. Quiet quitting, maybe. I don't know. Next one, gaslighting. I hear this all the time.
what's interesting to me is the fall of gaslighting, right? Because Merriam-Webster made it their word of the year in 2022. So how does in 1 year it goes from the word of the year to now it's like
To
so
needs to be
overused
banished.
it needs to be banished? Like
I
that's
do
a
hear
fall
it quite
from grace.
frequently. I
That's a
hear it frequently.
I think it's because people misuse it. In my opinion, I think it's because people misuse it, or
Or
they
they
don't
just-
understand fully what it means.
Or they think every single in an argument they're being gaslighted all the time. I don't know. I truly couldn't tell you. I do not use it very frequently. Moving forward, that's a good transition. That's a fantastic transition.
I feel like moving on is more commonly used. Like I feel like there's better
Moving
words for
forward.
each single one.
moving forward,
Goated-
just say
I guess
furthermore.
moving on. Moving on to the next word, amazing.
Amazing. No,
That's amazing.
absolutely not.
That's amazing that it's on there.
Does it make sense?
I feel like that one's because like people use that sarcastically, you know? Like if you're speaking to someone who you think is like stupid, you're like, you know, does that make sense to you? Like
That would bother me. I would feel inferior. I
it's about the
truly
tone.
would feel inferior.
It's about
Yes.
the tone. And I think it's like you need to be it's just an indication you need to be more
Yeah.
nice to people.
Irregardless.
That's a big word.
That is a big word, and I can't say.
They're
I
very
use it much.
they're very academic on this list.
Who wrote this?
Lake Superior States College, Michigan.
Wow.
I'm not really sure why they're the authority on this. I feel like Merriam-Webster or somebody would be the better authority on this.
Absolutely. Oh no, that was the 9th word. Absolutely.
Oh man.
Guilty.
Banished.
Absolutely. I think
You can be more diverse in your vocab. I get that one.
just say for sure.
Okay.
Just joking.
Alright.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah, I agree with
I
that
think
one.
that came
Enough
from
said.
the meme.
Probably.
It's a huge meme.
You know,
Enough said.
I see that on a lot of bios, I think.
If you had a word that you had to banish in 2023 that you wish you would never hear again, what would it be?
Well, when you preface like that, I had a word in mind, and now you like, I don't want to like hear it again. I'll just acknowledge that it's overused and should
Okay.
be banished.
Uh-huh.
Dog.
Dog.
I use this all the time because like, in my mind, I banished like bro and bruh like
Yeah.
3 years ago. So I use dog now, but now it's just overused. We need to find a new term that's like that.
Oh boy, it's in this day and age, it's going to be something that doesn't make sense at all. And
Well-
that leads me to mine.
Well-
Cap? Are you serious?
Cap.
Since when did cat mean lie? I don't understand.
I always think it's funny. Have you seen that video where like it's like a 4th grade test and it's like what does cat mean and some like it's a black kid and it's like you're lying. Like that's
No.
we're hurting our youth with our vocab.
I think slang has taken a turn for the worse.
We're just hitting.
Do you know how the Stoics talked? It was so elegant. So elegant. So
Well, yeah, but they also, I mean, I'm not gonna get in a controversial issue, but they also had a lot like freer education and a lot
fair enough.
more opportunity to get educated. You know,
Again.
get that vocab up. But
I'm very guilty of using the word cap. As a matter of fact, I think
I
I,
don't
used
use
it
cap.
earlier today. But I try not to.
I don't use cap anymore.
My parents started using it and I feel guilty.
That's when you know Gen Z and millennial slang gets to your parents, I feel like that's when it's time to get banished.
That is when things need to stop.
Like
Yes.
I still call my mom dog, and she still thinks that's like disrespectful.
Okay.
Which, you know, that's like a indication to me that like maybe it doesn't need to be banished. Now I'm not advocating disrespecting your mother. Like
I would hope
very,
not, yeah.
I'm very close with my mom, so you know I call her dog sometimes. I'm like,
Okay,
dog, come on
okay.
now. And
She's
you
like,
know,
what did you say?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Fair.
or like I'm not your dog, which kind of hurts.
I'm like,
it's okay.
dear mama, you're my dog.
Yeah, so I think that it's definitely overused, but I don't think it should be banished. But it was my.
But
word.
we can acknowledge it's overused.
It was my word.
I can acknowledge cap is overused, and I think it should be banished.
I think cap should be banished too. It's been banished from my vote.
Let us know what you think. What
Give us some
word
words.
do you never want to hear again?
Give us some
know.
words. That's gonna open up a can of worms. There's gonna be some bad words on there.
Give us words, but also give us more ideas for what you want to hear for the next fun section.
Yeah.
Because we want to make this unique to you and to our audience.
We want to know what you think is fun, because maybe talking about cap and dog is not your cup of tea.
So give us anything you can think of. Moving on. Moving forward.
Whoa. Banished.
Excuse me. Moving on.
You're gonna have to leave the set. All right. Well, let's return. I think we covered routines and daily goals.
I think we should discuss how it develops. I'll put this in quotes, but guaranteed consistency and success.
I think so too, and I also think we should let our listeners kind of in on what we are trying to do. I think it's only fair that we kind of go over our routines and daily goals.
I would like you to elaborate.
Putting me on the spot.
Go for it, man.
So again, I'm gonna harp on sleep, but I've kind of, and now I don't know if I'm ripping off of any academic places here, but I've kind of developed a triadic day, if that makes sense. So triad 3.
Right.
So I split my days into, I sleep from 9 to 5, 9 in the night to 5 in the morning.
I think that's a very good sleep schedule.
Because of my school schedule and the way that it's set up, I can have 5 to 9 usually to work out, do that 30 minutes for a skill, and then I go to school, and that's my other 9 to 5.
Okay.
And now these aren't exact times, right? But it's just a theory of dividing your day up into 3 sections of 8.
It's structure.
8 for sleep, 8 for your job, college, or school, wherever you're at, and then you have 2 4-hour segments between when you wake up and when you go to work or school, and then when you come home and you go to bed.
Okay.
And so that's 8 hours for you to be productive.
Okay, so like deep work you're talking. That's not what you do in your daily life,
right?
But unique
it's something
to you.
it's something that. Now I'll acknowledge that school for me is not really that important right now. A lot of what I learned is coming outside of school. A lot of where I'm growing is coming outside of school. I think that's just a byproduct of
and I don't think that's controversial to say. I think that's fair to say.
Because last semester of high school, you don't necessarily go through that academic grinder. I know I went through an interview with a college today, which acknowledged that your last year of high school largely is just you doing what makes you happy and what you enjoy, which maybe not necessarily be what you're going to learn from. It's just something that brings you happiness, which is great. But for me, that means that most of my learning of consequence and things with meaning happen outside of school.
Okay.
But it's important because especially it's not a term that a lot of people in our audience will be, antiquated with, but work-life balance.
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance may be applying to our audience. School-life balance. Applying equal time to both is great.
Right.
Ideally, you would get your work done for school or for work at work. Now, in American culture, it comes home with you, which I definitely disagree with, but that's another conversation. But allowing yourself 8 hours allows you the leeway to come home with it a little bit, but then set it to the side and you have, 6 hours to get things done in your life.
For sure. And that's interesting that you say that you split your day up into 3 like that, because I do not do that in any way. But that's what we keep saying. To each their own. Everybody is unique.
You gotta find what works for you. Like 100%. This has not been something. I've honestly only been doing this for like a month and a half, and for me, it's just something that works now. It's
become a habit
built into my schedule. But I've tried other things and they just didn't work. So you gotta have a little bit of trial and error. It's gonna be. I'm struggling to think of an example, but it's like most things in life where you gotta try an approach, and it probably won't work the first time. If it does, good for you. That's great.
And it's funny you say that, because it almost reminds me that part of life is the exact opposite of the structure of school. In school, you learn the lesson and then you take the test, but I feel like in life, you're usually tested and then you learn the lesson after. If that makes sense.
Deep.
And
that's deep right there.
And it's. You said work-life balance, and that reminded me of this quote that I heard. It was, I find it hard to comprehend, and I'm paraphrasing here. I find it hard to comprehend that most people have just accepted eat, sleep, work, entertainment cycle is life.
Yeah.
And have no
Not for the
interest in understanding the deeper purpose in our universe and our everything. We've just accepted that this is what life is, with no intention of further understanding.
Well, and
it.
we outlined that from the beginning that people, I consider it like the industrial age. Since the industrial age, a large part of like civilized life has just become accustomed to the lifestyle they're given, and they're okay with
Right.
it.
I
Versus
agree.
thinking deeply, challenging stuff, and pushing for higher quality things.
Right.
For the sake of not really getting into political issues, I'll just leave it at that. But we see a push now, especially from our generation, where people are
Right.
like, they're questioning, and they're like, is this really all that life has to offer?
Right.
And I think that comes from a place of deep thinking, that comes from a place
Right.
of philosophy, and I think that's a really good thing that we're trying to be a part of right now.
And we've said this before, but we see a shift in society and
We see it in our daily
people's
lives.
attitudes. Yes, and I felt that in the past 6 months, I have shifted my perspective on life drastically.
No, I can
And
back you up on
I
that.
know you can say the same. And you talk about deep thinking and seeking knowledge, and you talked about in the industrial age that's when it started to shift. But nowadays, everything is so accessible. I mean, I've heard this countless times, and I've said it myself. Why would I need to learn this if I just have the internet? That's the kind of the mindset that a lot of people have adopted. But I think that's a very toxic mindset. Oh, just because there's an easy solution, I shouldn't keep seeking.
I can see why you come at it, because that's a very stoic perspective, and I think that it's good to acknowledge that stoicism has a lot of errors. Like, nothing is perfect.
Right.
And I think that the taking the harder path is not always the right thing to do. And why I say that is because you use the example of I have the internet, why would I go to college? And
Right.
I've said that to you. I've said that to you
I
multiple
think
times.
we've both said it for sure.
But I think that is actually part of the wave. I think that people are realizing that institutions maybe don't have their best interests in mind and are
Right.
looking for those easier solutions.
Right.
Because there's nothing to be ashamed of finding an easier way. Like, the phrase "work smarter, not harder," I think that's a reasonable phrase.
Right.
It's just not taking it every single step of the way. It's
Exactly.
acknowledging what you can do, and that's the part of routine and daily goals, is you realize like what you can take a step back and take the easy way out of,
Right.
and what is hard work that you need to accomplish.
Right, and you're totally right. I believe that efficiency is critical. Finding ways to work smarter and not harder. The reason I use that example is because I feel like with the internet, and when you can just look it up, is you lack critical thinking. You lack the ability to develop ways of problem solving, ways of marginal analysis, ways of just solving any challenge that you come across. When you just have the answer that already exists, all you have to do is look it up. But whereas if you approach a problem from what can I gain from this instead of how can I just get around it, if that makes sense. But I am all for efficiency, and I think that online education, as a matter of fact, may be in fact the future of education, and I say that because I believe it allows more flexibility.
I mean, and I know we're kind of getting away from routines and daily
Right.
goals, but it's a valuable conversation to have. I'm kind of under the impression, until the workforce acknowledges, like right now you see like Southern New Hampshire, you see University of Phoenix, you see the online schools, they get discredited because they're viewed as like the terrible schools that like people who don't really have prospects go to, and so the workforce doesn't really hire them at high rates. They hire them, but they don't hire them at high level paying jobs. And so until the workforce adapts its mindset, I don't think it's going to change.
I agree.
What might change is the cost, because we as a society are coming to a collective agreement in America that the cost of education is too high.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that many people are realizing that, and
well, we're certainly realizing that when we apply to college.
and it's interesting because I feel like the more people realize that college becomes too high, the more people are going to look at alternative routes and become more creative, and actually awaken to there's more than just college.
Right.
You don't need college to be successful.
Not
I feel like
necessarily,
that
no.
was a very common belief pushed on us by previous generations, And that's not to say that college isn't useful. If you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, of course you're going to need to go to college. I mean, it's a pretty big deal.
Right.
But if you want to be, for example, we want to be we're young entrepreneurs. We're striving to start our own businesses and make money in our own way and be financially free. I personally believe you don't need to go to college for that. I think there are many other ways that unique to each individual are better to learn.
I think that as part of, to kind of tie it back into what we were talking about loosely, what you need to do is you need to have a self-realization process of where you're at and what college does for you. Right. I think college is right for this person but not right for the next person. And so if you go to a college that you know is a good fit for you, the colleges I've applied to, I know are going to be a good fit for me. And so they're worth the cost of attendance. But that's not the case for everybody. So it's a self-realization process and it's just a self-review of where you're at, what your goals are, what you need, and then you apply that onto the college landscape.
And that's exactly right. And I believe that you discover that self-realization through developing good habits and through setting goals every day.
It's consistency.
As you constantly and are always evolving mentally, physically, however, you will start to realize more about yourself than you ever knew. One thing I've learned about school was, yes, the education is important, but what's more important that I gained personally was the social lessons about people, about relationships, about networking. Those are the biggest takeaways for me. I don't remember the I do remember the Pythagorean theorem. I don't remember much of chemistry. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Come on.
Let's go.
But
we passed pre-calc.
We did pass pre-calc.
Flying colors.
But it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people can say this. What you learn in school, you forget about. And
I think we should have an episode on just the school process. I think that's a byproduct of how the American education system works, and that it teaches to a test. But I know you wanted to talk about guaranteed consistency, and I don't think you've gotten a fair chance to do that. And we kind of got off tangent. So
we did get off on a tangent, but I think it's
a valuable one.
It was
and
valuable.
One to explore a little bit more.
Right.
But I know for you, like I've been saying, like routines and daily goals, I think while they're important to me, they're a lot more important to you, that you credit them a lot more. And so I just like you to speak on, guaranteeing consistency with the routines and stuff.
I appreciate you giving me credit for this. I think for myself, the biggest thing about routines is I've always struggled to find something that works for me. I always start something, and then I give up because I fail. And I'm like, I couldn't be perfect. Ultimately, even today, I am still trying to find something that works for me. And I feel like now what I have, I'll explain what I have in just a moment, but the routine that I have set up, what's changed the most is my mindset. Instead of focusing on the result, I'm focusing on the process. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have a clear end goal. Always keep your end vision and your goal in mind and keep it clear. But what you need to understand is that is a long ways away. You have to climb, like I said, every rung of the ladder first instead of taking giant leaps.
So would you say then that what you're planning is, so those daily goals are the steps on the ladder, but then you're also advocating for having long-term goals, and so
Yes.
you build your daily goals to have the long-term goals.
Yes. So daily goals, the way I see it, is just another way to improve yourself to become more capable of reaching your long-term goal. I'll give you an example. One of my long-term goals is to retire my mom. I want to retire my mom, put her in a beautiful home where she's comfortable. She never has to work a day in her life. That is clearly in the future, 5 to 10 years. Again, I don't like timelines and putting a date like you said.
Right.
But how am I going to get there? Well, I'm starting off with daily goals. I have started meditating every day. I have started reading every day. I have started praying every day. I have started consistently building habits that are improving my mental capacity, that are improving my physical health, both very important things. And I'm going to use those to learn new skills that are going to allow me to become financially free so I can do that. You don't want to do too much at once, however.
No.
The thing about so like I said, I'm going to explain what, for example, my morning routine is very simple. I wake up, I take a cold shower, like you were saying, I drink water, I go upstairs and make breakfast, and then I get dressed. Sorry, I misspoke. After drinking water, it's a meditate, pray, breakfast, get dressed, leave. The reason that I'm doing this specifically is because I have had self-realizations throughout this process. It's a very hard process, which is self-improvement. It is one of the hardest things that one can do, and that's why many people fail to actually go through with it.
And that's why it's one of the most impressive things a person can do.
100%. And I feel like people who have figured themselves out do not get enough credit.
No, not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough. And then again, I'm not doing it to get credit from other people. I'm doing it for myself. And that's another thing that a lot of people mistake, and I have been guilty of this many, many times. I'm doing things for the wrong reason. When I started going to the gym, it was for the right reasons. I wanted to improve myself. Then I was like, how can I get more girls? Going to the gym, obviously. I got off in the wrong mindset, and I could tell because my quality of life drastically decreased.
Mm-hmm.
But then once I was like, I'm not doing this for anybody else except for me, then it started to go up.
Beautiful. Well, I think we're pretty close to time. We've gotten some good things. We've gone over our routines. I think we're not really advising a certain routine. I think we just went over ours to give examples, and I think routine is just what you make of it, and it's something that I would advise you need to try and find what works for you.
Yes.
You don't need to have a routine 24/7, I would say.
No, I think too much structure is a bad thing. Like, too much of anything is bad. Balance is very important. You need to understand that life will beat you down. Life will throw things at you that you couldn't even imagine. Bad days will approach you, and that is inevitable. And because of that, you have to understand that the work that you put in your routines and the habits that you build are going to prepare you for those moments.
Just structure what you can.
Exactly. If you miss one thing or another on your list, don't beat yourself up about it. Forgive yourself, but then understand that you must remain consistent and you cannot relapse.
Right. Guarantee that consistency.
Yes.
To yourself through routine. And I think if you have the mindset that you are going to guarantee yourself consistency by holding yourself accountable, like we've talked about, beautiful things will happen.
Yes. My biggest takeaway for all of you would be, don't focus on perfection. Just focus on consistency. You miss a few things here or there. That's better than not doing anything after you relapse for a certain period of time. So just change your mindset, be forgiving, and just be consistent.
I completely agree.
And on that note, I would just like to say thank you all for listening and taking time out of your day. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. And just take it easy. Be mindful. The Daily Stoic.
Shout out my mom. I love you, dog.